Blood was dripping from the ceiling. Thick, dark, and slow. The police lights outside flashed through the small basement window, painting the room red and blue. Detective Harris stood frozen, staring at what looked like a homemade torture chamber. Chains hanging from hooks, a camera pointed at a stained chair, and a strange smell that made his stomach twist. The walls were covered in plastic sheets and beneath them were photos, hundreds of them, of people no one had seen in years. At the center of it all was Mark Peterson. Quiet, polite, and always smiling neighbor Mark, now sitting on the basement floor, hands cuffed, his eyes blank as he whispered, "They told me to make it perfect." Detective Harris swallowed hard. "Who told you, Mark?" Mark looked up slowly, his mouth curling into a small smile. "You'll meet them soon." And just like that, the lights went out. 2 months earlier, no one in Maplewood would have guessed Mark Peterson was capable of anything strange. He was 36, lived alone in a quiet blue house, and worked at the local hardware store. Everyone said he was just one of those nice guys. He mowed old Mrs. Coleman's lawn, helped fix kids' bikes, and baked cookies for the neighborhood watch meetings. But under that calm, friendly smile, something was brewing. It started after his mother passed away. She'd lived with him all his life, and her death left the house too quiet. Mark began spending long hours in the basement, telling neighbors he was fixing it up. Sometimes they'd hear strange noises, metal scraping, faint music playing at odd hours, but when asked, Mark just laughed it off. One night, as he walked home from work, he saw a missing poster for a teenage boy named Ryan. The photo stared back at him from the lamppost, and something in Mark's eyes changed. He tore the poster down and stuffed it into his jacket. That same night, he began rearranging things in his basement, moving boxes, setting up lights, and building something. He told himself it was just a hobby, but he knew it wasn't. Days turned into weeks. Neighbors noticed Mark stopped coming outside. The windows of his house stayed covered, and a strange smell began to drift from the backyard. The mail piled up. But in small towns, people mind their own business. They thought maybe he'd gone away. Until the screams. It was around 11 p.m. when Mrs. Coleman heard it, a short, sharp scream from next door. She called the police saying, "Something's wrong in that house." When officers arrived, Mark answered the door calmly, wearing gloves and a nervous smile. "Sorry, officers," he said. "Just watching a horror movie. Got a bit loud." They checked briefly but saw nothing out of place, except a small streak of something dark on the floor leading to the basement door. "Mind if we take a quick look down there?" one officer asked. Mark froze. For a moment, everything went silent, then he nodded slowly. He led them down the creaky stairs step by step into the darkness below. The smell hit first, then the sound of dripping. The officers' flashlights swept across the room, and one of them gasped. What they saw next would make headlines across the entire country. And just as one of the officers reached for his radio to call for backup, something moved behind them. The movement behind the officers was fast, too fast. A shadow darted through the dim light, and before anyone could react, the basement door slammed shut with a loud bang. The officers spun around, their flashlights shaking as they pointed them toward the stairs. "Who's there?" one of them shouted. No answer. Only the creak of the steps above. Mark stood completely still, his face pale but oddly calm. "You shouldn't have come down here," he whispered. The younger officer, Miller, stepped closer, his hand resting on his holster. "Mark, what's going on here?" Mark looked at the camera in the corner, the one facing the stained chair. "It's not me," he said softly. "It's them." "Who's them, Mark?" Mark didn't reply. Instead, his eyes flicked toward the far wall, covered in thick black plastic. Something, or someone, was moving behind it. Miller ripped the plastic down, and what he saw froze him to the spot. Behind it was a small, makeshift room built from plywood, lit by a single flickering bulb. Inside, tied to a chair, was a teenage boy, barely breathing. His mouth was taped shut, his eyes wide with terror. "Oh my God," the other officer, Daniels, whispered, rushing forward to cut him loose. "Call for help now." But when Miller reached for his radio, the signal was dead. No connection. No sound. Only the slow hum of the basement's old generator. Then came the noise again. A dragging sound. Like heavy boots scraping against concrete. Miller swung his light toward the noise, and there, half hidden behind a pile of boxes, was a figure. A man. His face covered with a mask made of old leather, his hands stained dark red. Before Miller could draw his weapon, the masked man lunged. The next few seconds were chaos, shouting, struggling, a gunshot echoing off the walls. When the smoke cleared, the figure was gone. Vanished into one of the basement's narrow side tunnels. Daniels was on the floor, bleeding from his arm, trying to press his radio. "We need backup. Now. Basement, north side." Mark sat down on the floor, whispering over and over, I told you they don't like visitors." The teenage boy was shivering, eyes darting around the room. When Miller untapped his mouth, the boy gasped, "He's not the only one, there are more rooms. Down there." He pointed to a small metal door in the corner of the basement, half buried under old planks. Daniels forced it open, and a gust of freezing air blew out, carrying with it the stench of decay. The tunnel beyond was long and dark, stretching deep under the house. "Mark," Miller said, aiming his flashlight into the passage, "what's down there?" Mark looked up with a faint, eerie smile. That's where it all began. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and somewhere inside the tunnel came the echo of footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. The teenage boy screamed, and Miller raised his gun, aiming toward the darkness. But then, something reached out from inside that tunnel, something pale, human-shaped but wrong, and grabbed the boy's leg, pulling him back in. The scream that followed made every officer's blood run cold. Miller dove forward, trying to pull the boy back, but the door slammed shut with a deafening clang, locking tight. And from the other side they heard a whisper, so quiet it almost sounded like a breath. "You shouldn't have opened the door." For a long moment no one moved. The air in the basement felt thick, heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. The flickering bulb cast wild shadows across the plastic-covered walls. Officer Miller banged on the metal door, shouting, "Hold on! We're getting you out." But the only reply was silence. Then, faintly, the sound of dripping again, only this time it was coming from inside the tunnel. Daniels, bleeding but determined, stood up and aimed his flashlight through the crack under the door. "There's water," he whispered. "No, it's blood." Mark sat against the wall, laughing softly to himself. "You can't stop it," he murmured. "Once they wake up, it's too late." Miller turned to him, furious. "Who are they, Mark? What's going on here?" Mark's eyes darted around the room like he was listening to voices no one else could hear. Then he whispered, "The ones she told me about. My mother said they lived under us. She said they were hungry. I didn't believe her until I heard them, until I saw what they could do." Daniel's voice trembled. "Your mother?" Mark nodded. "She started it. I just finished her work." Suddenly, the metal door rattled violently, making the walls shake. Something was pounding from the other side, loud, rhythmic, and angry. The old light bulb above them exploded, plunging the room into darkness. Daniels turned on his backup flashlight. "We're leaving," he said, grabbing Mark's arm. But Mark didn't move. "You can't leave," Mark whispered. "They won't let you." The pounding stopped. Then, from the shadows of the tunnel, a soft child's voice echoed, "Mark, come play with us again." Both officers froze. Daniel's hand trembled as he reached for his gun. That sounded like a kid. But before anyone could speak again, the metal door slowly creaked open on its own. The tunnel beyond was pitch black, except for a faint red glow deep inside. Miller took one cautious step forward. "I think I see the boy." He stepped closer, raising his flashlight, and the beam caught something small lying on the ground. A shoe. The same shoe the boy had been wearing. "Daniels," Miller said shakily, "he's gone." And then, out of nowhere, something slammed into him from the side. The flashlight flew from his hand, spinning across the floor. For a split second, the beam landed on the attacker, and both officers saw it clearly. It looked like a person, but its skin was pale gray, stretched too tightly over its face. Its eyes were black, hollow, and its mouth moved like it was trying to speak, but no words came out, only a low gurgling sound. Daniels fired twice. The creature dropped, but when they looked again, it was gone. They ran for the stairs, dragging Mark with them. But halfway up, the door at the top slammed shut. The sound of locks turning echoed from above. Mark began laughing again, louder this time. "Told you," he said. "She's not done with me yet." Daniels shoved him against the wall. "Who, Mark? Who's not done?" He looked up at the ceiling, his voice shaking. "My mother." At that moment, a cold whisper came through the vents above, clear and sharp. "Good work, son." The power in the house flickered back on, flooding the basement with harsh white light. The walls were clean now. No blood, no chains, no plastic. Just a normal basement. The camera was gone. The tunnel door had vanished. Miller blinked, confused. Where did it all go?" Mark smiled calmly, the same polite smile he always gave his neighbors. "What do you mean, officer?" "There's nothing here." The basement looked perfectly ordinary. No sign of struggle, no bodies, nothing. When backup finally arrived, the officers searched every corner. They found no tunnels, no missing boy, no evidence at all. Just Mark, sitting quietly on the basement steps, humming a lullaby. They arrested him anyway, but in the reports that followed, there were only questions. The photos from the officers' body cameras were blank, white static. The sounds recorded were only low whispers and faint laughter. Weeks later, the Peterson house was put up for sale. But no one bought it. Sometimes at night, people walking past swear they hear faint banging coming from underground, and a voice, low and tired, whispering through the cracks in the driveway. "Help me. I'm still down here." And every year since, another missing poster appears on the same lamppost where Mark first saw the boy's face. No one ever finds them.